Hi everybody, my name's Tom Chesterton. I'm the Managing Director of Tonic. We're a brand consultancy here in London. This is part 3 of TonicWith, which is our series about talent and the people within it. Really pleased today to welcome Matt Alder as our guest. Matt's the founder of Metashift, and I'm guessing that most people have heard of Matt, or have seen him speak, or have read one of his blogs, or been interested in one of his articles. But Matt, I met you first probably, I mean you may not even remember this, but way back in the late 90s when you were at either TMP or Monster, depending on where they were at that point.
Of course I remember, of course I remember.
Clearest day, I should think.
Absolutely, yes.
So, tell us a little bit about Metashift. What do you do?
So we're a strategy consultancy. I think that's the best way to describe what we do. So we work with employers and we help them understand how their sort of recruitment marketing, their recruitment communications is working, what they can do to sort of really make sure it fits with their overall resourcing objectives, how they can look at sort of innovative new methods and new technologies and new ways of working, and you know, we do audits to help people understand where they are. And then we sort of produce strategies so they can, you know, move forward and you know, hopefully work with companies like yours to you know, to get the best possible candidates into their businesses.
Okay, cool. That sounds very interesting. But it's not your only company, though, is it? You have another one that's bubbling away as well.
Yeah, I have always had a massive interest in the mobile internet. And mobile recruiting, and a lot of the work that I've done with Metashift has you know, kind of shown just how important mobile is to, or how important mobile should be in a kind of employer's strategy, and because of that, there was a kind of a real I suppose gap in the market for a software platform that helped people sort of frame recruitment marketing in the mobile space. So 3Sparks, which is the mobile company I've started, does exactly that. It provides a kind of a recruitment marketing platform that's mobile first.
Okay, fascinating. I imagine that your view would be that most people aren't necessarily where they should be from a mobile perspective.
No, not at all. I think that people tend to sort of fall into two categories, if I'm sort of, you know, generalising. The first one is they're not really doing anything about mobile. It may be on their radar or something that they need to look at, but they're not actively doing anything. And then the other camp are people who are doing something, but you know, without meaning to sound particularly harsh, I think most mobile activity is. It's just kind of, some of it's tokenism, some of it's sort of ticking a box. There are very few employers out there who are adopting what I call a mobile first strategy. So they're thinking about mobile, you know, as something that perhaps the majority of their job seekers are using during the recruitment process, and they're not thinking about the full implications of that. So I think we've got quite a way to go with mobile recruitment until it's kind of locked in and mainstream, but it's certainly a very interesting time.
No, absolutely, and I'm really keen to explore a bit more about that a bit later on.
Okay.
So, having seen you on stage a few times and met with you professionally a couple of times as well at various conferences and late night bars and whatnot, I'm really fascinated with you from a professional perspective, but I'm not sure that very many people know you the person. So maybe you could just give us a bit of a potted history about you as what's your career path been, and who are you? What do you like doing in your spare time? All that sort of jazz.
Wow, I don't have any spare time. I'm self-employed. No, my career path. I kind of worked in sales for sort of the first 5 or 6 years of my career. I actually did a drama degree, which is always an interesting way to start your career. But I found it very useful actually. I worked at the Guardian in the late 90s in recruitment advertising. I worked in photography for a while, and then sort of around about 99, I started working for TMP, and then spent sort of 10 years working agency side before I set up my own business. In terms of what I do in the little spare time that I have, I'm a massive cricket fan and a massive music fan. So watching cricket and going to gigs principally.
That sounds like a good way of spending your time to me.
Absolutely, absolutely.
So was finding your way into talent then, that sounds like a bit of an accident rather than a design?
Yeah, it was actually. I had the job with I was in sales. I had the job with the Guardian. I then sort of moved into photography for a little while, photography sales, and sort of 98, 99. I was sort of very, very keen to move into the internet. The internet was kind of back there. Seems like it's a very long time ago, but unbelievably was seen by many to be a fad or something that wasn't going to catch on. And I love working in areas like that. So I was really keen to work for anyone who would give me an internet job, basically. And it happened that it was a recruitment ad agency, and ever since then I've been sort of very committed to and interested in the recruitment communications, recruitment marketing space. But it was the internet that kind of led me into it, basically.
No, I remember those days very well. I think when we first met, I was working for a job board called Top Jobs on the Net.
Yes, I remember it well.
But I remember I used to speak to people and they used to ask me to print out the internet and send it to them so they could look at it. As odd as that might sound, and clearly some people took a little bit longer to acclimatise to this thing we now use almost ubiquitously.
Yeah, exactly. And I think it's really interesting because the kind of attitudes towards the internet as a whole back then, I saw them again. I've seen them again in the sort of last 4 or 5 years with social media, where people initially thought that Facebook was a fad that was going to disappear very quickly, and now those kind of same attitudes seem to happen around mobile, where people just don't think it's as important as it is. So there's a real cyclical nature to this. It's really quite interesting as talent and recruitment develop through these sort of technological phases. The same attitudes seem to happen. Sometimes from the same people, actually.
Yeah.
but yes, it's really interesting.
Yeah, that's very true. So if you were looking back over your career and you looked at the thing that you would go back and change first,
what would I go back and change? I think I've been very, very lucky, actually. There's nothing that I can really think about that I'd want to change. I don't think I could have got into the internet much earlier, so I can't make any changes there. Maybe I did turn down a job with considerable share options in what will have to be an unnamed internet startup that went on to be a very big deal. So maybe I'd take that job. Maybe that's the one thing I would change.
So you've always been quite entrepreneurial, I would guess. What's the thing? What's the thing you're proudest of in your career?
I think it's starting my strategy business, going out on my own. I think I really enjoyed my 10 years in agencies, built up a couple of digital teams, worked with some absolutely brilliant people, but it's just been really nice to be able to start something with kind of no support and no one else, and it's just kind of me and the fruits of my labours, and it's great to be here 5 years later with with some great clients and some great work behind me.
Okay, is there an example of that you could share with us? Something that you've put in place that has made a big difference for a client or for a colleague, or just something very specific that you can draw on?
I think there's it's difficult because there are a lot of things. I think building the software platform is actually the thing that I pull out. We have a number of companies on that platform already, and it's massively sort of helping their conversion rates and engagement rates and things like that, and that's a great example of sort of creating something. I've done some great I've done some great projects helping companies understand innovation, and it's great to sort of look back at some of those sort of 3 or 4 years later and see them using some of the channels that we were talking about. Okay,
cool. So I guess one of the things that I've noticed in you looking at more recently is kind of the global perspective of the world. I know you spent some time in the States looking at current and emerging technologies and how they impact on the recruiting process. And I think you've met pretty interesting people. Who stands out for you as the most exciting person you've met on your journeys?
The most exciting person I've met on my journeys. That's a really interesting question. Yeah, I've done a lot of traveling. I've spent a lot of time in a number of countries. I suppose I'm trying to think. The person on the kind of employment side I've met who's doing the most interesting work is a recruitment marketing guy at Maersk, the Danish oil company. He's doing some. Met him in Denmark actually. He was speaking at an event, and saw him again speaking at an event in London, and he's just doing some really great stuff with social media in a market that you wouldn't expect it. You wouldn't expect it to work. I spent quite a lot of time in Silicon Valley a couple of years ago. Met some really, lots of really interesting people. I mean, there isn't really anyone who sort of particularly stands out. But what was interesting with that trip was to see how, companies like Facebook and Dropbox and Foursquare actually do their own recruitment, and the sort of tools and techniques that they use. And I don't subscribe to the viewpoint that the technology they have in the US is any better than the technology we have in the UK. I just think Silicon Valley is such an interesting place because it's such a high growth area with such an acute skills shortage. So what you find there is that the recruiters are being much more entrepreneurial, much more innovative, and doing really interesting things to find the talent that they need from a very tight market.
Yeah, can you bring that to life a little bit? So if you think about some of those interesting things that they're doing, what sort of strategies are they employing that maybe are unique to their environment?
So really interesting networking strategies. I think I remember meeting the then recruiter at Foursquare. She's moved on to do something else now, and really it was all about they built some internal technology, and there's stuff like this that's on the market where they map the LinkedIn and Facebook and Twitter and presumably Foursquare networks of their current software, well, in fact all of their team, but particularly their current software team. And when she was out sourcing for talent, she could spot where there might be a connection in common with their existing team. So they did lots of activity, lots of sponsored events and marketing and all that kind of stuff. But basically, if she was proactively reaching out to a developer, she would see how they were already connected to the company, whether they knew someone who was there or knew someone who knew someone who was there. Whether she could reach out via that person, or at least mention the the connection in common, to get a response from them and start the conversation.
Okay, so it's really enabling them to use their personal connections as an
So, I think it's something that everyone could do. This was a couple of years back, so they'd actually built some proprietary technology to actually make that process easier. But I think it's a really overlooked. To me, that's really social recruiting, and it's kind of something that lots of people overlook when they're broadcasting their jobs out on Twitter and hoping for the best, basically.
Yeah, and I see that an awful lot with organisations who maybe aren't thinking about, what is this thing that is social really all about? It's about being in a conversation with somebody. It's about undergoing, building relationships effectively. So how do you do that? You don't do that by whacking a load of jobs out onto Twitter or Facebook or just broadcasting, as you say. It's kind of more about engaging in dialogue, as you would do if you were in any social engagement, rather than thinking about it being more virtual.
I mean, I think it's a mix. I think it's evolving. I think that aspect is really important. And how do you make the most of the networks of your, all of your employees? So I tend to work with very big companies, but I'm working with a 200-person company at the moment. And what's been important for them is actually getting all of their employees linked together on LinkedIn, so they can really understand when they're recruiting, how they might be connected to this person. So I think that's a big part of it. What I also think is interesting is as LinkedIn, Twitter, Facebook, whoever it is, as they've developed and become big companies, massive companies, and very much driven by making revenue, which is something that's changed from 3 or 4 years ago. So social media and social recruiting is potentially going full circle and becoming much more about advertising and marketing again. So there are lots of interesting ways of promoting content and advertising on social networks, and I think that maybe there's a disconnect in the recruitment industry that people are sort of spraying jobs out on there as if they're job boards, when there are some interesting, sophisticated ways that they could market to reach an audience, and understanding content marketing and promoting stories is an interesting way to do that.
Yeah, and presumably where mobile technology fits into that is around the opportunity to personalise those messages and those stories, rather than general broadcast, as you say.
Yeah, I think that's part of it. I also think that the other thing that it's important to remember is that most of, as an employer, if you're crafting this beautiful social campaign, the vast majority of your audience who consume that campaign are going to do that on their mobile. Most social media usage is mobile, so it's kind of worth bearing in mind when you're looking at the lovely Facebook page or whatever it is that you've built on a huge screen at your desk, that actually it's going to be viewed on a mobile as part of a ever scrolling news feed, and you're competing with the friends and family and all the broadcast media to get that person's attention. So I think I heard a sort of a phrase the other day. It's about thinking about newsfeed optimization. That we live in this sort of the world of the newsfeed where all content is kind of consumed in this scrolling, very scrolling thin box on a mobile. And I think that to me is the important thing for people to understand, that most of the stuff that they're putting out there is being consumed on a mobile device.
Yeah, okay. I guess it's what it actually boils down to, is remembering that everybody is a human being and that everybody uses their devices in the same way that we all do. So the things that we respond well to, the things that the people we're trying to communicate with are likely to as well.
Yeah, exactly. And I think sometimes people can go into this strange way of thinking, where suddenly it's like, as I say, they're looking at what they're producing on big screens and not thinking about how they might relate to the content. And I think that's an important first step. Then the second step is trying to understand what the difference between how you might relate to it and how your target audience is going to relate to it, and what are the differences, and what do you need to think about in that space. Okay,
so I guess one of the things also to think about is that not everybody finds it easy to make the case internally that mobile and even social actually is the right way of thinking about the world. And it's clearly part of a central part of what you're focused on for Metashift. So how do you work with employers to help them to make the business case?
So certainly with social, what I've found now is that certainly most employers that I speak to and work with are doing something with social, however tokenistic that might be. And to me, it's kind of really, I always start by trying to understand what what the problems are, what the issues are, what the targets are, what are they actually trying to do in the in the talent space. How many people do they need? What issues do they have? And I think then relating that to what they're what they're doing overall is really important. And I think that in terms of making the case, it's understanding the audiences that you're trying to target. I mean, to be honest with you, I see people sort of throwing stuff at Twitter accounts that are never gonna hit the mark and never reach the audience that they're looking for, and that to me is a complete waste of time, and they'd be better off not doing social at all if that's what they're trying to do. So I think it's really back to good old-fashioned media planning, for want of a better word, understanding where your audience is, and you'll find that a large number of audiences, social is a great way to reach them.
Yeah, I agree, and I think that one of the things that I find a lot of is that people aren't really sure what good actually is. In terms of, are we trying to achieve a total number of likes or fans? In which case you can employ a strategy that is entirely dedicated in terms of getting those likes or those fans, or are we trying to build a community? It requires a completely different approach, and I'm not sure there's that level of understanding about where ROI should be. So it'd be interesting to get your take on how you would measure success and how that might vary from platform to platform.
Yeah, I think that there is an obsession with what I call sort of vanity metrics. So how many likes can we get, all that sort of stuff. And I think that again, it comes back to what as you say, what are they trying to achieve? Are they trying to reach a big audience of potential interested passive candidates? Are they trying to fill one very, very hard to hard to fill job? What's the so you have to start with that. I always look at even just basic metrics of engagement when it comes to social. So how is your audience engaging with your precise content? So rather than looking at how many people like your Facebook page, what happens on a content by content, piece of content by piece of content basis? Are you just posting stuff out there that no one's even seeing, let alone engaging with? So I think that's important. I also always look at what how the employer is engaging. So are they retweeting content? Are they replying? Are they are they sort of being social about it, as it were? And then I think if you identify your audience, it's looking at growth rather than overall numbers. So are we hitting the right audience? Is our are our metrics growing? Are we getting good engagement? Ultimately, we want people to click through and apply for a job or register for something. So how does registrations or click-throughs or whatever whatever that end goal is, how does that relate back to our social metrics, and what can we build up in terms of a picture? I think to me, Facebook is the most difficult one at the moment.
Because they keep on changing their metrics and their algorithm, or is it for other reasons?
Well, actually, I mean, it's fairly straightforward. I mean, Facebook are trying to make more and more revenue every month, and they're doing a brilliant job of it. They've just released some amazing numbers, and for so long, Facebook didn't do that. So I think people got used to marketing themselves, their company, whoever, on the world's biggest communication platform for nothing, in a really easy way, and it was kind of inevitable that wasn't gonna last. So understanding that Facebook is a commercial entity and understanding the implications of that, I think are really important. So if you have a Facebook employment page that has 100,000 likes, even just by putting content on there and not paying, you're going to get a reasonably sized audience for that. Your audience is going to be sort of 3 to 10% of that for each bit of content. If, like most employers, you have a recruitment page that has 50 to 500 likes, your potential audience for the content you post, 3 to 10% of that is going to be absolutely tiny. and you might as well pack up and go home, or consider having a much more sort of precise paid for strategy, and look at what it actually drives for you. If you can get, there are other ways you can get people to engage with social media. I know that you guys do some sort of great stuff in that area, and that's important as well. But you can't just put content out there and expect stuff to happen. I think that's the real key point.
Yeah, no, I think that's right. And I think all the work that we've been working on over maybe the last 18 months or so has been about how do you take a real experience and then allow that conversation to continue in social, on an ongoing basis, rather than it being a one hit. This is not about push marketing in the way that it used to be. It's about how do you build something that gives you real experience, and also make sure that you can maintain that on an ongoing basis.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's the thing, and I think there's an interesting bit about how do you maintain people's attention spans and interest over a longer period of time. I think if we look at some of the graduate communities on Facebook, some of those are becoming quite mature now, and the total audience is everyone from school leavers to people who may still be in that group who've on that page who are 1 or 2 years into their job. And I think it's understanding that and understanding how you can keep people sort of engaging that over time. And I think that good storytelling and good content are the way to do that after the initial hit of whatever it was that got them there.
Okay, good answer. So one of the things that I've seen you promoted as is a recruitment futurologist. I'm not sure what one of those does, other than I don't even know what happens next. But that's good to follow on to my next question, which is around if you look at where things might well be in 5 years' time. I mean, we're currently in this market where mobile is driving all of our personal experiences. It's the thing that we integrate most into our lives. From the moment we go to bed to the moment we go to sleep, it's there beside us. How do you see things moving forward? Thinking about wearables and thinking about the way that technology is developing. How does that technological development impact on recruiting?
Yeah, I think there's a few things. There's a few things about that. The march of mobile continues almost relentlessly, and that's having an impact on lots of things. Sometimes, I mean, obviously mobile screens are getting bigger. The iPhone 6 is apparently going to come in 2 sizes, and sometimes sort of very traditional digital recruitment people think that means that they don't have to change anything, because if it's a bigger screen, you can still view these horrific 300-page recruitment sites, effectively on it. And I think that we're just going to have more devices. They're just going to get more interesting. Wearables is interesting. I'm not quite sure. We've quite seen where that's going to go yet. But if Apple release an iWatch, that could be that could, I think it's going to be called iTime. That could be interesting.
What I do then? That sounds good.
Don't quote me on it. And where I think this is really interesting is something that you sort of mentioned earlier about the sort of personal nature and the personal targeting of these devices. So I'm kind of less interested in whether it's glasses or watches or brain implants or shoes or fridges or whatever it is. I think the level of data that these devices are harvesting is very, very interesting from a marketing perspective. So any Android phones out there, any Android users out there who aren't using Google Now, I would kind of really recommend you have a look at Google Now and see what it does in terms of targeting very timely information based on your location, based on pretty much all the data in your phone, and telling you when your next meeting is and when you should leave and how to get there and all that kind of stuff. And I think that, to me, is the blueprint for where we go in recruitment. It's all about being targeted and personalised, and building building a really interesting kind of decision funnel to take people through. So I think it's the speed and personalization are absolutely the key, and we're still in this kind of weird transition phase between the old-fashioned lovely desktop-based internet that we first worked in, via social, into this kind of mobile recruiting thing. And unfortunately, I think it's going to take some time for the industry to move. But the job seekers, the audiences that they're targeting aren't moving still, and this whole sense of targeted, appropriate, timely information delivered to your device of choice, whatever that device might be, and that might be a desktop computer, depending on personal preference. But that's important, and I think that it is personal preference in terms of where I want to see the information, but you have to give me the opportunity to see that information on any device. And I think what happens sometimes in our industry is we try and second guess people and say, well, people will never apply for a job on their phone, and when they look for a job, they walk into a room and sit at their desktop and they do this. And that varies from person to person, let alone audience to audience. And I think that's a big problem. So yeah. Relevance, targeting, speed, personalization. I think that's where we're going to have to go.
Cool. I am a big fan of Google Now. I think it's amazing, and I think that kind of approach is kind of almost being followed by LinkedIn and their connected app. I think that's a fantastic step forward in terms of personalization of experience as well. So completely agree with you. I think it'll be interesting to see how all these devices integrate as well, because you look at things like how the next issue of OS X and iOS 8, for example, start integrating devices. I think that's kind of a little bit maybe more about how the future sits in terms of experience that can transfer from device to device to device.
Yeah, I mean, totally. And I think that's that's a big thing for us in recruitment and talent. It's like, how do you make sure that I have the experience that I want, a seamless experience across all of my devices, and I might interact with your recruitment experience on a phone, on a watch, on a desktop, on a laptop, and on a tablet. And how do I get consistency and appropriateness of experience throughout that? And as I say, it's going to be my personal preference as to what device I use to do for what. Which means the bad news as an employer is that you have to offer that unified experience on every device, because you just don't know what your ideal candidate's going to want to do.
Yeah. Okay. So I've got one last tough question for you. Okay.
Okay.
It's going to put you on the spot a little bit. You've already mentioned Mask. But if you looked at all of the employers who are actively recruiting or trying to retain the most talented people, if you looked at what they're doing, who stands out for you as being an organisation that's actually doing this really well? Told you I was going to put you on the spot.
That's always a difficult one. I think Unilever do a good job with social media. They do a good job with lots of they have lots of content, which is quite good. To be honest with you, it tends to be when you see really great stuff being done, it tends to be some of the smaller, often American-based startups when they're recruiting people, and they're not kind of held down by the shackles of how things should be how things should be done. Who else have we got? It always tends to be the same old names, doesn't it? So I'm gonna throw in a few. Let me have to think of a few more. Having just judged the RMAs, I should obviously have loads of. I'm just trying to think from there. Enterprise Rent-A-Car seems to be doing a good job, particularly with blogging. What I find is that it's difficult to find someone who's doing brilliantly across the board. Everyone seems to be, there are examples of people who are doing good, good stuff in specific channels. Basically, so sort of mix of stuff and a couple of names in there.
Okay, so my old geography teacher used to describe a lot of my work as being a curate's egg, and it feels like you describe the recruiting world in the same way. So some good, some bad. and nobody.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, I think I think that the key issue is our audience is not standing still. They're moving at 1,000,000 miles an hour in terms of how they want to look for jobs and how they want to coordinate with companies. And it's great when companies do great stuff and win awards, but very often they're winning an award for something that would have worked 12 months ago, but the world has kind of moved on. So I think that is the biggest challenge, that we're now talking about constant change and constant development. And previously, in the kind of old world, it was all about building a recruitment website and hoping you didn't have to build another one for a couple of years. And those days are kind of really over. So we're looking at sort of continuous recruitment marketing now, and I think that is a big challenge in lots of different ways.
Yeah, no, I agree, and particularly because that always doesn't move in the same pace that we want it to, or the cycles aren't exactly aligned. So big challenges all round.
Yeah, and I think it's kind of ironic when we first started working the internet, sort of persuading people to buy an ATS system or have a corporate website was a novelty, and it was really difficult to do. And now they've become the entrenched positions, and multiple stakeholders within a large employer expect to have an input and see the corporate recruitment website, and there's the ATS is entrenched and all that kind of stuff, and even some of the most innovative people on the employer side who are trying to do interesting things are sort of stuck and still kind of have this issue within their with the expectation within their companies that that's how you do recruitment. So it's kind of ironic because if you kind of wind back to the late 90s, that's what we were persuading people to do, and I seem to now spend my time persuading them not to do that. Yeah. But makes it fun.
So what's next for you in the next 12 months? Where's your focus going to be?
More of the same, really. Really trying to get the mobile software business out there to more clients. We've really been in beta with it this year. We wanted to make sure that it's the best possible product. So after the summer, we'll be taking that to various parts of the market, continuing to help really help employers with their strategy, trying to help employers who are maybe stuck in the old way of doing things, helping them sort of build a bridge to the new way of doing things, helping people build business cases is what I do quite a lot of, helping them educate stakeholders internally and find budgets to do some great stuff. So we've got a few interesting projects coming up for the rest of the year, bit of stuff in the Middle East, lots of stuff in the UK. So should be a very interesting year.
Fabulous. So listen, thanks so much for your time today. It's been great. We'll put links to your sites
Cool.
so that people can find you.
Okay, perfect.
Any last words of inspiration that you might want to pass on, and tell people how they can get hold of you?
I'm very easy to find. I'm at Matt Alder on Twitter. Website metashift.co.uk. I would the sort of parting words. I would urge everyone in this industry to be curious, to keep looking, keep researching, keep thinking about how their candidates might be using these devices that are coming onto the market. I think in the last quarter of this year it's going to go a bit ballistic because Apple are going to throw some new stuff, some new things into the market. Not everyone buys an Apple device, but everyone's affected when they do, because their competitors copy them, and there's always a huge amount of hype and coverage about what they're doing. So I think expect quite a few sort of developments in the mobile space in the last sort of 3 or 4 months of the year.
That sounds like an awful lot of fun. And actually, it's a consistent theme for some of the talks we've been having in the TonicWith series, that curiosity is the thing that keeps us all fresh and keeps us interested in what we're doing.
Absolutely.
So there we are. So Matt Alder, thank you very much for your time today. Really, really, really interesting talking to you. So thank you very much. And
thank you.
Hopefully you'll be able to tune in some more of our TonicWith. So thank you very much for being part of us.
Thank you very much.